For those of you who we haven't met, hi, I'm Kelley Cordeiro from Long Island RBERN.
Hello, everyone. I'm Flores.
And we will be co-hosting today's session on co-planning for the digital classroom.
So if you haven't already, we invite you to visit our website, to join our listserv, and to be sure to follow us on Twitter.
Our entire RBERN team is here with us today. Hi, everybody. And of course, we're always available to support you in any way that we can. So here's our contact information. And we encourage you to please reach out to us or reach out to any resource specialist via email if we can support you in any way.
We also invite you to subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel, where you can find recordings of past webinars and instructional snapshots. Some of you may have seen the instructional snapshot on co-planning in the digital classroom that was shared on Twitter and our website. This will be the basis of our discussion today, and we will expand upon the co-planning tool by modeling how it can provide the foundation for your digital classroom. So at this time, I want to again welcome everyone to sign into the chat with their first and last name, district, and title, so we can confirm attendance and provide CTLE credit.
That was my dog, Teddy. You heard that in the background. And with that, let's get started. So we will be viewing the co-planning instructional snapshot that we have already posted on our website and on our YouTube channel. We're going to be walking through this together today through Edpuzzle, which is a free resource in which you can embed questions, discussion points, and even voiceovers to scaffold or assess students as they view a video. This creates the opportunity for structured engagement during shared or independent viewing.
So another great feature of Edpuzzle is the closed captioning, which you may choose to activate for those students who may benefit from having the text visible while viewing the video. So Edpuzzle also allows you to crop videos to focus on a specific segment that is most meaningful to instruction. So it allows you to be intentional with your selection and not overwhelm students with a lengthy video.
So what we'll be doing, as I said, is walking through the co-planning snapshot on Edpuzzle. And I want you to keep in mind as you're viewing it that you are seeing it from a teacher account, which will differ slightly from how your students will see it. We're going to start the first clip.
Hello, everyone. I'm Flores. And I'm Kelley Cordeiro, and we're resource specialists with the Long Island RBERN. We're going to be sharing with you some tips and resources for co-planning in the digital classroom during distance learning.
Kelley and I have created a co-planning template for a unit of study that is specifically geared to the demands of the digital classroom. We've taken into account instructional considerations needed to support our population of ELs.
As you can see, in addition to anticipating the duration of the unit of study, we're also planning for what will be the best digital platform to deliver instruction.
This middle section of the co-planning tool asks us to consider how teacher modeling, guided practice, group work, and independent work will be facilitated through digital tools.
To make sure we have a collective understanding of these elements, we want to point out that we're planning for how we can digitally support the gradual release of responsibility for our remote learners. How does the I do, we do, you do together, and you do alone structure of learning transcend from our traditional classrooms into our digital classrooms?
At the bottom of the tool, we are again asking teachers to consider the various scaffolds that need to be planned to address the unique needs of our students, whether through sensory, graphic, interactive, social emotional, or digital support.
We chose to highlight an entire unit of study because this supports teachers who have limited co-planning time. And again, we want to point out that this is a great tool for ongoing co-planning, whether in our current digital classrooms or in our traditional face-to-face settings.
So although this was an existing tool that these two lovely ladies just shared with you, we know that our current co-planning demands have shifted along with our current mode of instruction. So Eric and I felt that teachers needed a tool that would support their co-planning while also keeping the distinct demands of the digital classroom at the forefront of their conversations. So again, we chose a unit plan because aside from facilitating the co-planning for the co-teachers, another benefit that we saw of planning on a weekly or a unit basis is that when you share your plans in this way in your digital classroom, it gives your students and parents a bird's eye view and a roadmap of the curriculum, kind of a heads up of what to expect in the week ahead and how to best plan for that time.
Yeah, so the adaptations that we made lend themselves to the considerations we need to keep in mind at this time. So we want to hear from you and how you would answer the question that was posed in that clip. How are you and your co-teacher supporting your remote learners while implementing the I do, we do, you do model of instruction?
So at this time, we're going to ask you to please add your responses in the chat, or you can also use the raise your hand feature on Zoom if you'd like to share something with us. And we really want to hear from you. And more importantly, we want your colleagues to be able to learn from you, to hear what's working for you.
So I'm looking in the chat just to see if we get some responses from co-teachers out in the field right now.
And Nicole, you asked if the slideshow will be sent to you. Yes, we will be publishing the recorded session on our website and on our YouTube channel as well, so you can access it after today's session. And I see that Samantha Sand is sharing that she uses Seesaw and Zoom. She uses modeling through Zoom. She shows the Seesaw assignment. She does a read aloud. So lots of great tips coming from Samantha on how she is approaching her digital co-planning and instruction. Anyone else, we would love to hear from you. Just so you know too, at the end of today's session, Eric and I will be going through any questions, any comments that have been added to the chat, and we'll be curating all of that information to also make sure that we go back and we answer any questions, or to share any highlights that people have entered in the chat. We will share that information with you after today's session.
Right, so I do see also responses like Microsoft Teams, modeling the whiteboard and read alouds. Screencastify, I know, has been very popular, and I see it here in the chat as well. And then meeting live to discuss. That sounds kind of like the flipped classroom that Heather was referring to last week. Okay, I'm gonna see more Zooming, even in small groups. Wow, there's a lot of responses are coming in now. These are great. And again, we were definitely going to be sharing some of these best practices with you. And for now, we're gonna go back to our Ed Puzzle. Again, remember, as a teacher, I have the capability to skip, but students do not, if you're not familiar with Ed Puzzle.
Now, to demonstrate how this template can support your co-planning, we have created a completed template based on a fictional unit of study. And we identified the digital platform as Google Classroom.
Zoom and Screencastify are tools that can provide opportunities for teacher modeling, both synchronously and asynchronously in the digital classroom. For our demonstration purposes, we have selected Google Slides and synchronous Zoom meetings as possible ways for providing guided practice.
While these elements are typically happening during every lesson in the traditional classroom, they are just as important in our digital classroom. An unanticipated advantage of our current situation is that modeling and guided practice videos are accessible to students for repeated viewings throughout the unit of study.
There are many ways that we can create opportunities for students to engage in group and independent work. Here are some examples that we chose because they play nicely with Google Classroom. Using Google Slides or Google Hangouts allows students to collaborate in small groups. Students can then independently demonstrate their learning through Google Slides, Google Docs, Google Drawings, Flipgrid, or Edpuzzle, just to name a few.
Additionally, many students may be seeking outlets for expressing their feelings or ways of processing their unique experiences. Designing independent work that allows for flexibility may also provide an opportunity for addressing social emotional considerations.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to point out is that in selecting the digital platform, ideally it should be something that you and your students are familiar with, that you have used before in your traditional classroom.
And similarly, when you're selecting the digital strategies and tools, you want to stick with tools that you and your students can use with ease, which will not cause any additional obstacles for our remote learners.
So again, we're using Google Classroom, but we have learned from colleagues that platforms like Seesaw work well with younger students who are able to work independently and require less parental support and intervention. So during our co-planning conversations, we made many of our subsequent digital tool selections based on what worked well and was compatible with Google Classroom. So your co-planning decisions should be based around the digital platform that you and your co-teachers have selected or identified as best for your learners.
So again, we're throwing it back to you. We want to know, what platforms are you using, and what are the other digital tools that you find work well with that platform to support all the components of instruction? So again, we're going to ask you please to go to the chat and just share anything there regarding the platforms, the digital tools that you're using currently in your digital classrooms.
Okay, so someone's agreeing that Seesaw is the best. And you know, we're not very familiar with that, but from the tutorials that I've seen, it does look very friendly for the younger learners. A lot of I see Nearpod also, Canvas, which is a similar platform as to Google Classroom. And Kami is great for editing PDFs. If you're struggling to figure out how to edit a PDF, that's a great tool to use for that.
And also, just so you know, again, maybe this is not the best time to be exploring new tools. As far as using them with your students, you can try to learn new tools for yourself for when we do return to the classroom. But it's also a great time just to explore if any of these options provide free versions of their platform, and you know what you can do within that free version in case your district does not subscribe to them.
Okay, great. So we're seeing a lot of great recommendations, and we'll compile a list again, and we will share that with everybody so that you can explore a little more as well.
As we co-planned this unit of study, also completed the scaffolding grid at the bottom of the co-planning tool, giving similar considerations to the tools that pair well with Google Classroom, while also providing the scaffolds our students are accustomed to and allowing for equity in access and multiple opportunities for success.
You might notice that for this demonstration, we were intentional with our selection of digital tools so as not to overwhelm ourselves or our students with too many different tools. The most important message here is to stick with tools that both you and your students are familiar with, capitalizing on the need for routine and making our digital classrooms accessible for all.
This co-planning tool.
Okay, so if you're struggling with providing scaffolding, or you're just seeking additional guidance on strategies to support remote learners, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel, where you can watch our past presentations on scaffolding for ELs in the digital classroom. So we have a Powtoon on there, which is a brief 3-minute video, and also Tune In Tuesday, where we kind of really broke it down a little bit more for everybody. And Kelley is putting links in the chat right now to both of those YouTube videos. Thanks, Kelly. I see one in there.
Okay, they should be both in there now. The first is the Powtoon, the second is the YouTube video. I also wanted to let you know that the blank co-planning tool can be found on our webpage, but we will also put the link in the chat now for you. Erica's going to add that.
Okay, so I know that someone mentioned they were having trouble seeing the tool when we were going through the video, but now you have the whole tool, a blank copy of it. You know, we just ask that you make a copy so that you can edit it yourself, however you may choose with your co-teacher.
And now we're going to take a look at this item. This is a co-planning toolbox that Eric and I created to assist in the planning stage of the co-teaching process. So we had this toolbox handy when we created the fictional unit plan that we'll be taking a look at later. And we also invite you and your co-teacher to do the same. Have a tool like this handy as a quick reference while you're co-planning.
Right.
So Erica's adding a link to this document in the chat right now.
Yes, I just did. I just want to point out that this toolbox that we created was originally done for our co-teaching PD series, if any of you signed up for that. You might notice that we divided the strategies here into Seen Here and Explore More, which simply references the different strategies that were introduced during the three-part series versus those that teachers would have to explore on their own. And again, you might want to develop a similar toolbox or system with your co-teacher that reflects the tools and strategies that you and your students are comfortable with.
And now, once again, we're going to show you the completed version. This is a completed version of the co-planning tool that Eric and I put together and that we then used as the basis to create a Google Classroom.
So as we develop these instructional snapshots and webinar, there's a lot of digital co-planning that we engage in. And as we planned the Google Classroom, we allowed Zoom to just record in order to capture some of our authentic conversations. So here's a short clip of our planning process.
Okay, so this welcome statement on the stream, and then I think that we should also post the essential question slide,
Right.
because it's not an assignment. It's not something they have to like do. It's more just like view, right? And so
Exactly. That's more of a supporting document.
so then we'll leave the classwork for things that actually require them to like submit something.
Okay.
Okay. So this is what I did for the essential question. So the essential question, and then breaking down those two like essential words, so resilience and empowerment, and then kind of showing them, you know, so how can resilience lead to empowerment? So before, examples of resilience, and then the empowerment that resulted after. I did a second one before resilience and then empowerment.
Great.
So, all right, I'll post this. Keep clicking on the wrong place.
So as you can see, while Erica may have taken the lead in preparing the essential questions slides, it's important to note that we had already identified the essential questions together during prior co-planning conversations, and that it still required a discussion at this point as to where we wanted to post them in the Google Classroom. So pretty much every contribution made by either co-teacher is the subject of a conversation, because each decision impacts the development and implementation of the unit. So even, again, the decision of where to post should be, you know, where this post should be located is a detail that needed to be discussed because it took the students into consideration too. Just thinking about their ease of navigating the classroom and helping them to distinguish between assignments and supporting materials as they navigated through the Google Classroom.
So we're going to actually take a look at this Google Classroom. So let me make this a little bit larger. I'm not sure if you'll see it larger, but it works for me. All right, so at first glance, just by scrolling through, you can see that there's like this evidence of back and forth between the two teachers. But we're gonna go back and take a closer look at the components that we had highlighted on the co-planning template.
So the first thing you'll see is that our digital platform obviously was Google Classroom. That's what we selected to implement this unit plan. And if you remember the center grid of the co-planning tool, that part allowed us to co-plan for teacher modeling, guided practice, group work, and independent work, all of which you'll find here on our Google Classroom. So by looking at the classroom, you can see the QFT video, which provided teacher modeling and guided practice. You'll also see the QFT group slides that we created. And this created collaborative student work groups. And finally, you'll notice the exit ticket, which was an opportunity for students to independently demonstrate their learning.
Okay, so we need to be flexible on our expectations with the timelines of completion, of independent and group work. So the time frame for such an assignment would really depend on what the students are accustomed to and comfortable with, as well as the additional responsibilities that they might be facing during this time.
You'll also notice that the scaffolding considerations, while digital in this case, really mirror what we put into place in our face-to-face classrooms. But what you may notice that is a little bit different here is our heightened concern for the social emotional well-being of our students. Connecting with our students is critically important during this time. And we're sure that many of you are probably reaching out individually to check in on your students. As you can see, we wanted to make sure that the students in our fictional classroom also had multiple ways of reaching out to us. So here we have included our Google Voice number in case students feel more comfortable speaking to us directly via phone, FaceTime, or text.
So this was a starting point for our collaboration on the Google Classroom, but we also wanted to share an authentic sample from the field, because sometimes the best way for us to learn is from one another. And so this is what one pair of Long Island co-teachers have put together for their digital classroom. And as we go through this, you're going to see that it includes many of the elements that we have included as well.
So these teachers, they shared with us that in their established weekly routines, Mondays are always dedicated to journaling, which is known as Mindful Mondays. And so you'll notice in their classroom that the instructional week begins on a Tuesday. So students receive their work for the entire week through one Google Slides presentation.
So this group of students have been using Google Classroom and Chromebooks very consistently throughout the school year, yet the teachers still felt that they needed to lessen the academic workload to consider the additional strain that some students may be experiencing.
We want to highlight some of the scaffolds that these teachers have incorporated into this presentation, into their Google Classroom. For one, you can see that the expectations and assignment for each day's work are clearly labeled for the students. However, students also have the flexibility to work at their own pace because, as we noted earlier, they received everything at once at the beginning of the week.
Right. So here we have, this is both for Tuesday. You'll see that the slides are laid out in a way also that they don't have to do a lot of navigating to respond to prompts. So in the first slide, they can answer right here. The link to the following assignment is hyperlinked in here, so they can access additional supports in that way. The teacher, we did get a chance to look at these Google Forms, and the teacher did provide the students with sentence stems and other language supports to assist them in responding to those prompts. We have key vocabulary that is highlighted. Here, this little audio icon leads to a teacher voiceover reading aloud and explaining the directions for the students. You'll notice there's a lot of visual cues and supports throughout that really bring these activities to life, just like in the traditional classroom.
And there are also tremendous evidence of the level of co-planning that was involved in putting this together. We also wanted to point out to you, there is a linked YouTube video that leads students to a read aloud of the chapter that they're responsible for reading. And you may also notice that the teachers highlight the names of key characters to assist in the comprehension of the text. For those of you who teach at the middle school level, if you're familiar with this text, if you're familiar with this material, you may notice the apparent simplicity of the day's tasks. However, you'll also recognize the rigor behind each of these assignments and activities. So let's recap on why we chose to place such an emphasis right now on co-planning. We're going to go return to our slides and just talk about really the purpose behind today's presentation.
Right. So if the current reality does not allow for co-teaching, we still need co-planning. So let's reflect on the nature of the relevance of our co-planning in the digital classroom by answering the following questions. Where, how, when, what, who, and why are we co-planning?
So where are we co-planning? Again, this refers to, the digital platform that you're choosing, or really any context in which you and your co-teacher are finding each other to co-plan. So please feel free again to answer in the chat. There are many different options available to us for co-planning spaces. We've listed a few here, some of the more tech-based options, such as Google Drive, Zoom, Google Meets, FaceTime, Skype, Dropbox, OneDrive. Those are just a few that tech-based options that we're mentioning. Certainly there are many more that you may be using, but we can also go old school and just maybe meet with our co-teachers and co-plan through texting, emailing, and maybe even phone calls. So share with us what you're doing. Where are you co-planning? What is the space where you and your co-teachers and colleagues are needing to co-plan for your remote learners?
Okay, so I'm putting the link in again for that co-planning tool someone requested, so it's coming your way.
And again, anything that you were not able to grab from the chat today, we will be sharing all of the resources and materials from today's presentation will be made available to the recorded session, and any handouts and links that we added into the chat, we will be making those available to you. So I see some phone calls, FaceTime, Zoom, texting, email, a lot of different forms of communication going on. Google Slides, which are emailed a few days prior to each week.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see as many phone calls as I see here. I was assuming everyone would be trying to be very techie and do the face-to-face thing. But sometimes, you just got to keep it simple and whatever works for you. I think
Absolutely.
it's important
Absolutely.
to put that time in together.
Whatever works for you.
Okay, great. So we're going to move on to how are we co-planning. Reflecting upon the benefits of synchronous versus asynchronous, as well as the reality of our individual schedules. At times, synchronous conversation may be the most effective way to discuss and to plan for supporting the needs of our students. But, I know that some of you already shared that sometimes it's just email, right? So, but this is a decision that you have to make with your co-teacher, right? So what works best for you and how will you co-plan?
And really, I think we're all at the point where we are all figuring this out together. As each day goes by, we're figuring out what works best for us. So that leads us to our next question. When are we co-planning? And there's, some overlap in answering these questions. But when we think about when are we co-planning, again, do we have an agreed upon schedule? Are we making it a routine? Are we setting aside the time to make sure we are touching base in co-planning? Are we having daily conversations, weekly conversations? So again, please just share with us how often you and your co-teachers engage in co-planning conversations.
Yeah, so I did see someone bring up a great point that they have to keep a phone log of their parent phone calls, because and they said this is taking up a great amount of time, and I would imagine so during a time like this where we're following up, not only to check on our students, academic progress, but also their social emotional well-being. All right, so.
And really, a log is such a great idea because at this point, I know I could speak for myself and maybe many of you, the days are all blurred one into the next. So just for your own documentation and record keeping, to know when these conversations are taking place, a log can certainly be very, very helpful at this time.
Right. So to answer the question when, we have a lot of daily, which
is awesome.
Yeah, that is great that we are, really committed to this partnership and to serving our students together, right? That's amazing. All right, so the following question is, what are we co-planning? Do we have a focus for our co-planning? Are we co-planning lessons, units, single assignments or assessments? Keeping in mind again that the tool that we develop and that we shared with you is a unit plan. So it allows for both teachers to have clear expectations of what is coming next. Long-term planning is a great fit for those teachers who may not have opportunities to co-plan often. But let's hear from you guys. So what do you usually plan when you meet? Is it a single lesson, or do you try to do, long-term planning?
And remember that co-planning tool, while we prepared it for a unit, absolutely, that's something that can be modified to use on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, however it suits your needs.
Right. Weekly plans, bi-weekly. Okay. Okay.
I see one response that they are, just following the plans, following the unit that was established before leaving for COVID-19. And, that's no easy task to keep things going, to go ahead with the plan that was already in place. But if you're finding a way to do that, that's awesome and incredible.
Right. Okay.
So let's look at our next question. Who does what during co-planning? So this question leads to conversations concerning the division of labor, being mindful of and incorporating the areas of expertise that each teacher brings to the classroom, and ensuring that there's equitable access and support for all students. So both teachers really, really need to be contributing to this conversation to make sure that all of those considerations are taken and all of those elements are in place. So how are you navigating that part? How are you and your co-teachers approaching the division of labor and deciding who does what during co-planning? Is it set roles? Do you go back and forth? Let us know what you're doing. You can throw some responses in the chat. We'd love to hear from you.
I know most of the time when Kelley and I co-plan, we'd like to do a lot of it together. So whether it's through Zoom or, prior to this whole work from home experience, we would sit together and co-plan, but there's times where we would just try and divvy up the work and, okay, we'll handle this part and I'll handle this part and then we'll meet again. So again, if time is of the essence and you can't sit in front of the computer all day with your co-teacher, that division of labor is essential.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're getting some responses in the chat. So Nicole says that they're very transparent. They see everything and agree or disagree on things. They pick weeks to do things together and then weeks to tweak or add or change. Okay. I see some people say it depends on the topic, who does what.
True. And again, that speaks to, you know, the areas of expertise that each is bringing to that conversation and into the classroom.
Okay. Which is the great part about co-teaching, because everyone has, you know, something to bring to the table. And if we're not working together, we might never really see the other person's strength, right? So it's important to be open to allow them to reveal those strengths to you and and you know, share that with the students as well.
And I love how I see the variety of responses too, where, you know, some people are saying it depends on the topic, and then other people are saying, you know, we have our set roles, we maintain that each week, and it works well for you. So really, again, that's what it comes back to. What are your routines, and sticking to what's working best for you.
Great. Okay. So why are we co-planning? We wanted to share with you 2 recently published articles by Andrea Honigsfeld and John Nordmeyer that speak directly to the question of why co-planning and collaboration in support of ELS is so critical during this global pandemic and period of distance learning. So we're going to share these links in the chat. And here are some tips, highlights and tips that they shared.
I'm just throwing this in the chat here. This is the 2 articles should be coming through. Did both come through?
In just a second.
Or just the one?
Sure, nothing yet. I don't see it anyway. There we go. They're both there. Thank you.
Both there. Okay, good. Okay. So we would like to point out again the importance of sticking to tools that you're familiar with, but also the notion of intervisitation that was discussed in these articles. So even if co-teaching, as we're accustomed to, is not really happening right now, or happening to a different degree in our digital classrooms, we can still visit each other's digital spaces, which is really such an important practice to get into during this time. So we can see what's going on, we can see how we need to be contributing to the classroom, how students need to be supported. We want to provide an opportunity for you to learn more from each other. There's been a lot of sharing today that we really appreciate so much, because the authentic experiences and voices from the field are really where the learning takes place. So thank you for all you've contributed today, but we want to provide an additional opportunity for you to really learn from your colleagues. So we will be having a follow-up Friday session. So you know, with the RBERN right now, every Tuesday has been Tune In Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And we have also been providing follow-up Friday sessions. So this follow-up Friday on April 24th at 10:30, you can join our collegial circle to share something that you and your co-teacher are doing, or just to come as a participant to hear from others, to see what other Long Island teachers, what other colleagues are currently doing.
And if you are interested in participating, the registration link will be sent out this afternoon. And if you would like to contribute to the session, please reach out to us via email. And here we actually have some co-teachers who have been tweeting about their co-planning experiences and who will be joining our conversation on Friday. So we hope that more of you will consider joining us. We also want to remind you again to follow us on Twitter to see what your colleagues are doing and to receive updates on webinars and the resources the Long Island RBERN is providing.
And so that we can share what you're doing. We love to celebrate the great things that are going on with our Long Island teachers. And if you're sharing something that you're doing, we want to share that even further to celebrate that. So we have come to the end of this week's Tune In Tuesday, and we just want to thank you all again for participating. We hope that you found today's session helpful. Again, the original instructional snapshot is already available on our website and on our YouTube channel. And as we've said a few times today, the recorded session from today will be available shortly there as well. I just want to remind you again, if you haven't already, put your first and last name, your district, and your title in the chat so we can verify your attendance for today's session to provide CTLE credit. And again, Erica and I will be reviewing all the comments and the questions that you've entered in the chat today so we can follow up with providing as much support as possible.
And before we go, we want to remind you to return to My Learning Plan to complete an evaluation for today's session. Your feedback really helps us identify future topics and focus our efforts on your needs. So please visit our website frequently for updates, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Twitter. Be well, and we will see you on Friday.
Thank you, everyone. See you Friday.